Have you ever wondered what happens to towns when everyone just leaves? Walking through South Carolina's abandoned cities, I couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and sadness. Places like Stumphouse Tunnel, Hamburg, and Colonial Dorchester were once alive with families, laughter, and everyday life. Now, silence takes over. Standing there, I imagined the people who lived, loved, and dreamed here. These towns may be empty, but their stories are hauntingly real, and they stay with you long after you leave. If you're amazed by these forgotten towns, smash that like button and subscribe to Travel Guide Hub to explore more hidden gems and real-life adventures with me. 1. Stumphouse Tunnel, Oconee County, South Carolina, USA. When I first stood in front of Stumphouse Tunnel, the air felt colder than it should have been. Not scary in a movie way, but heavy, like the place was tired of being remembered. The tunnel didn't look dramatic at first, just a dark opening cut into solid rock, but the silence around it felt wrong, as if sound itself had decided not to enter. This tunnel is real. It sits in Oconee County, South Carolina, hidden in the trees near Walhalla. It was started in the 1850s as part of a railroad project meant to connect South Carolina to Tennessee. Back then, this area was full of hope. Workers believed trains would pass through these mountains, carrying goods, people, and a future. Local towns waited for progress to arrive on steel rails. The men who worked here used hand tools and black powder, no machines, just muscle, patience, and risk. They carved through solid rock inch by inch. Accidents happened. People got hurt. Some never went home. Still, the work continued, because stopping meant failure, and failure meant being forgotten. Then, the money ran out. The railroad plans collapsed. The tunnel was never finished. After years of work, everything simply stopped. Tools were dropped, camps emptied. Nature slowly moved back in. What was supposed to be a gateway to growth became a dead end. Today, the tunnel still stands, unfinished and silent. When you walk closer, your footsteps echo in a way that makes you aware of yourself. I remember thinking about the workers, how they probably imagined trains roaring through here one day. Standing there, knowing that never happened, feels strangely personal, like listening to someone else's broken dream. Water drips from the ceiling inside. Moss grows on the stone. The temperature drops the deeper you look in. There are no warning signs screaming for attention, no loud attractions, just quiet proof that not every big plan succeeds. What's happening now is simple and unsettling. The tunnel is preserved, visited, photographed, but never completed. It exists in between purpose and abandonment. When I walked away, I didn't feel scared. I felt respectful. Some places don't want excitement. They want you to understand that history isn't always success. Sometimes it's about what people tried to build and couldn't finish. 2. Hawthorne, Aiken County, South Carolina, USA. The first thing that strikes you about Hawthorne is how normal it feels at a glance. Trees, quiet roads, open land. Nothing warns you that a town once lived here. No ruined buildings shouting for attention. Just absence. And somehow that feels heavier than ruins ever could. Hawthorne was a real community in Aiken County, South Carolina. Families lived here, children went to school, neighbors knew each other by name. It wasn't famous or wealthy, but it was stable. People farmed, worked nearby jobs, and expected to grow old on the same land their parents had lived on. Life moved slowly, and for most people here, that was enough. In 1950, everything changed without warning. The U.S. government selected this entire area for the Savannah River site, a massive nuclear facility tied to Cold War weapons production. The decision was final. Residents were told they had to leave, not someday, soon. Homes, churches, cemeteries, everything had to be surrendered. What stays with me is imagining the moment people realized this wasn't a rumor, this wasn't negotiable. You can replace a house, but you can't replace belonging. Some families packed quietly, others fought the decision but lost. No matter how they reacted, the outcome was the same. Hawthorne was erased. By the time construction began, the town no longer existed. Buildings were demolished, roads disappeared, fields were fenced off. Even today, access to much of the area is restricted. That makes Hawthorne different from most abandoned towns. You can't fully explore it. You can't wander freely. You're kept at a distance, just like its former residents were pushed away. Standing near where Hawthorne once stood, I felt a strange kind of anger mixed with sadness. This wasn't a town that failed. It didn't dry up, flood, or collapse economically. It was sacrificed. People didn't leave because they wanted to. They left because they were told to. What's happening now is quiet and controlled. Nature has taken over what it was allowed to. The rest remains hidden behind security and history that still feels uncomfortable to talk about. Hawthorne doesn't look haunted, but it feels unresolved. Walking away, I kept thinking about how easily a place can disappear without collapsing. Sometimes a town doesn't die, it's simply removed. And that thought stays with you longer than any ruin ever could.
3. Lee, Aiken County, South Carolina, USA. Lee feels almost invisible when you first arrive. There are empty fields, a few scattered trees, and roads that suddenly stop, as if someone forgot to continue them. Nothing hints at the families who once called this place home. And yet, when you stand quietly, you can almost sense them, walking, talking, laughing, ghosts of everyday life. Lee was a small community in Aiken County, South Carolina. Life here was simple. People knew each other by name. Children walked to school together. Neighbors helped one another with farms, chores, and celebrations. There were no big cities nearby, just the rhythm of work and family, a life many would have called ordinary but fulfilling. Then, in the early 1950s, the United States government chose this land for the Savannah River Site, a secretive nuclear project during the Cold War. Residents were forced to leave, their homes, their land, their memories, all taken away to make space for something larger than their lives. The town didn't die naturally, it was erased. Imagining the people of Lee leaving is haunting. Some packed quietly, holding their children's hands as they walked away from everything they knew. Some argued, some cried, and some stared silently at the land that had fed them for generations. Their town didn't fail, they were displaced, and the land that had been alive with daily routines suddenly became a controlled, restricted zone. Today, what remains of Lee is almost nothing. The streets are gone, and most structures were demolished decades ago. Nature has started to reclaim the land, grass, trees, and weeds hiding any trace of what used to be. The area is fenced off and monitored, making it impossible to truly explore. All that's left is history and memory. When I stood there, I felt a strange mix of sadness and respect. You can see the outline of the town only in imagination, but knowing it existed, knowing real people built their lives there, leaves a mark on you. Lee wasn't abandoned by choice, it was removed, quietly and efficiently, leaving only echoes behind. Walking away, I couldn't help but think about how fragile communities can be. One decision can erase generations, yet the memory of them remains, almost like a whisper in the wind. Lee teaches that history isn't always about grand events, it's also about the lives quietly displaced, the homes that once thrived, and the silence left behind.
4. Ferguson, Clarendon County, South Carolina, USA. When you first hear about Ferguson, it's hard to imagine a town existing where now there is only water. Standing at the edge of Lake Marion, you see calm, glassy water reflecting the sky, and nothing else. But decades ago, this place was alive with people, homes, and laughter. It wasn't just land, it was a community, and its disappearance feels strangely personal when you picture it. Ferguson was a small mill town in Clarendon County, South Carolina. Families worked in lumber and farming, children ran through dirt roads, and neighbors gathered for church and community events. Life was simple, steady, and rooted in the soil of this town. People knew everyone by name, and they belonged to this land in a way you can only feel when walking where generations once stood. Everything changed in the 1940s. The construction of the Santee Cooper project, which created Lake Marion, meant Ferguson would be submerged underwater. Families were forced to leave their homes. Some tried to salvage what they could, taking small belongings, family photos, and memories. Others watched helplessly as their town would vanish forever. The roads, the houses, the mills, they all disappeared beneath the lake's rising waters. Imagining the final days of Ferguson is haunting. I think about the farmers who planted crops that would never grow, or the children who walked to school for the last time without knowing it. Their town didn't collapse naturally. It was swallowed by human decisions, by progress, and by a project that saw the land only for its utility, not its life. Today, Ferguson exists only in memory and in occasional glimpses when the water is low. Divers sometimes explore the foundations beneath the surface, but for most, it's just a quiet lake. Nature has taken over completely, and yet, if you close your eyes and imagine the sound of footsteps on streets, laughter in front yards, and the hum of daily life, you can feel Ferguson's heartbeat. Standing at the edge of the water, I felt a mix of awe and sorrow. This wasn't a ghost town created by neglect, it was a living place deliberately erased. Ferguson reminds us how fragile human communities can be and how easily progress can drown not just land, but memories. Walking away, the lake looks calm, almost peaceful, but beneath it lies a story of people, dreams, and a town that once lived.
5. Granby, Casey, Lexington County, South Carolina, USA. When you drive near modern-day Casey, it's easy to miss Granby entirely. There's nothing left on the surface to hint that a thriving town once existed here. Just streets that have been repurposed, quiet fields, and the hum of nearby highways. But if you stop and imagine it, Granby was alive with families, businesses, and hopes for the future. Granby was once the county seat of Lexington County, South Carolina. In the 1700s and early 1800s, it was a bustling town with government buildings, churches, and homes. People walked to meetings, children played in the streets, and local merchants sold goods to neighbors and travelers. Life wasn't extravagant, but it was steady, filled with the rhythms of everyday work and community. The decline of Granby didn't happen overnight, but it was relentless. When the county seat moved to Lexington, Granby lost its purpose. Businesses closed, families left, and slowly the town emptied. Unlike towns destroyed by disasters or forced relocations, Granby faded quietly. Streets became overgrown, buildings crumbled, nature reclaimed what had once been a hub of activity. Standing where Granby used to be, it's easy to picture life as it once was. I imagine the local baker opening his shop, the church bells ringing on Sunday mornings, children laughing on dusty roads. And then, as decades pass, the silence grows. You realize that abandonment doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers, and that whisper carries the weight of history. What remains today are only traces, foundations, old maps, and memories recorded in history books. Walkers and explorers can sense the town's outline in the land, and occasionally some bricks or stones hint at what used to stand. It's quiet, almost solemn, as if the town itself is asking visitors to remember it gently. Leaving Granby, I felt a strange mixture of peace and melancholy. There was no drama, no destruction, no flood or fire, just life slowly retreating. And that's what makes it haunting. Granby teaches that not all lost towns vanish in a spectacular way. Some simply fade from memory, leaving only the echo of the lives that once filled their streets. 6. Ellington, Icahn County, South Carolina, USA. When I first learned about Ellington, I couldn't believe a whole town could just disappear.
Driving through Aiken County today, there's no trace of streets, homes, or shops that once existed. Only quiet fields and fences mark the land where families lived for generations. Standing there, it felt strange, like being on sacred ground, touched by history but empty of life. Ellington was once a small, thriving town. Families worked, children went to school, neighbors helped each other in ways only small towns can. People celebrated weddings, shared harvests, and lived lives of small joys that to them felt permanent. There was a rhythm to life here that comes only when generations belong to the same land. That stability ended abruptly in 1950. The United States government chose Ellington as part of the Savannah River Site, a secret nuclear production facility for the Cold War. Residents were given no choice. Homes, schools, churches, everything had to be abandoned. I can only imagine what it felt like for families packing up decades of life in a few weeks. Some held on to family photos and heirlooms, others walked away silently, trying to memorize the place they would never return to. Ellington's fall wasn't due to neglect, disaster, or economic collapse. It was deliberate. The town was sacrificed for national security. Standing on its former streets, I tried to picture children running through yards, neighbors gossiping at fences, the hum of ordinary life that was erased in an instant. That thought left a knot in my stomach. Today, the land is fenced and monitored. Nature has slowly reclaimed what it could. Fields grow wild. Trees filled spaces where houses once stood. Only records, maps, and memories remain to tell Ellington's story. When you visit, you feel the absence more than the presence, a silence that speaks louder than any ruin could. Walking away, I realized that Ellington isn't just a lost town, it's a story of people who loved their home, of ordinary life suddenly removed, and of history shaped by decisions far bigger than its residents. For a moment, you feel their lives echo through the land, reminding you that communities aren't just buildings, they're people, memories, and the invisible ties that bind them to a place. 7. Dunbarton, Aiken County, South Carolina, USA. When I first read about Dunbarton, I imagined a town frozen in time. Visiting the area today, you'd hardly notice it existed. Empty fields stretch across Aiken County, and fences mark the boundaries where families once built their lives. There are no streets to follow, no houses to enter, yet the land feels heavy with stories, as if it remembers the people who once walked there. Dunbarton was a small community, full of ordinary life. Families farmed the land, children played in open fields, and neighbors helped each other in quiet ways that only close-knit towns know. People celebrated birthdays, weddings, and harvests, and there was a comfort in the routine of life. To the residents, Dunbarton wasn't just a place, it was home, a foundation for dreams and daily joys. Then, in the early 1950s, the government arrived with a decision that would erase Dunbarton forever. The Savannah River Site, a nuclear production facility built for the Cold War, required the land. Families were told they had to leave immediately. Homes, schools, and community buildings were abandoned. Some residents packed only what they could carry, while others stood silently, memorizing every detail of their streets before leaving for good. It was not a town that failed or ran out of resources, it was removed deliberately. Imagining those last days is haunting. Parents holding their children's hands as they walked away, elders staring at the homes they had built, and friends saying final goodbyes. All of it vanished into history. Unlike abandoned towns left to decay, Dunbarton's disappearance was planned and complete. Nature and time reclaimed the land, and the community lives now only in memories and historical records. Today, walking near where Dunbarton once thrived, the silence is almost tangible. Trees grow where houses stood, and the wind whispers through empty fields. There is no traffic, no sound of life, just a quiet reminder that history can erase people's world in an instant. Leaving Dunbarton, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and awe. It's a story of ordinary lives, uprooted not by misfortune, but by decisions beyond their control. Dunbarton may be gone, but the echoes of the families, their laughter, and their dreams linger in the land, teaching anyone who listens that every place has a story, and some stories are never truly forgotten.
8. Meyers Mill, Aiken County, South Carolina, USA. When I first tried to find Meyers Mill, I realized it was not just a town that disappeared, it was a town that history tried to erase. Driving through Aiken County today, all you see are open fields, patches of forest, and the faint outlines of roads that once connected families to their homes. There is nothing dramatic, nothing screaming for attention. Yet standing there, you can feel the lives that once filled this land, as if the air itself holds memories. Meyers Mill was a small, close-knit community. Families farmed, children went to school, and neighbors leaned on each other through good times and bad. Life was simple, predictable, and full of small joys. People celebrated together, shared work, and built traditions that would have lasted generations. To anyone living there, the town was more than a place. It was a life, a history, a home. Then came the 1950s, and everything changed. The government selected the area for the Savannah River Site, a massive nuclear production facility. Residents were given notice that they had to leave. Homes, churches, schools, and cemeteries all were cleared to make way for the project. People packed what they could, leaving behind the rest: furniture, barns, fields, and memories. The town didn't fade naturally, it was removed deliberately to serve a purpose far bigger than the lives of the people who had built it. Imagining the final days of Meyers Mill is haunting. Children played in yards they would never return to, farmers walked through fields they would never harvest again, and elders stood silently, memorizing the streets they had known all their lives. The town's heartbeat stopped not because of neglect or disaster, but because it was taken. Today, nothing remains except traces in old maps, historical records, and the imagination of visitors. Nature has reclaimed the land, and access is restricted, leaving the area quiet, still, and almost sacred. Standing there, you can feel the echo of what was once a living, breathing community. Walking away from Meyers Mill, I felt a deep respect for the people who lived and loved there. Their stories, their lives, and their dreams may no longer be visible, but they linger quietly in the land. It is a reminder that some towns don't vanish because they failed, they vanish because history demands it, leaving only whispers behind. 9. Colonial Dorchester State Historic Site, Dorchester County, South Carolina, USA. When you first step onto the grounds of Colonial Dorchester, it doesn't feel like a ghost town. The air smells of old trees and earth, and the ruins look small and quiet, almost like a forgotten garden. But standing there, you can sense the weight of hundreds of years. This was once a thriving colonial settlement, full of people, dreams, and daily life. Colonial Dorchester was established in the late 1600s and grew during the 1700s. Families lived in wooden homes, children played near the church, and the streets were filled with the sounds of daily work. Merchants sold goods, craftsmen shaped tools, and neighbors relied on each other for survival. Life was simple, hard at times, but deeply rooted in the community and the land. Then history moved on. Dorchester faced challenges from warfare, economic shifts, and migration to other cities. People left gradually, seeking better opportunities or safer places to live. By the late 1700s, the town was abandoned. It didn't burn down, and it wasn't destroyed violently. It simply emptied, leaving behind stone foundations, a few chimneys, and the outline of streets that once bustled with life. Walking among the ruins, it's easy to imagine the lives that once filled the town. I pictured a mother carrying water from the well, children running barefoot along dirt paths, men and women working together to keep the settlement alive. It felt personal, as if these echoes of daily life were reaching across centuries to tell their story. Today, Colonial Dorchester exists as a historic site. Visitors can see the remnants of buildings, the old church and the fort. But the real story is invisible, the people who lived, laughed, worked, and dreamed here. Nature has taken over much of the land, and the silence is profound. Yet, standing there, you can almost hear the whispers of the past, reminding you that this was once a home, not just ruins. Leaving Colonial Dorchester, I felt a mix of awe and melancholy. It's a place that teaches patience and memory, how towns can fade without destruction, and how lives once ordinary become extraordinary in memory. Walking those paths, you realize that even in abandonment, history survives through the stories of the people who lived it.
10. Hamburg, Edgefield County, South Carolina, USA. When I first tried to find Hamburg, it felt like chasing a memory. Drive through Edgefield County today and you'll see quiet land, a few roads and trees swaying in the wind. Nothing hints at the town that once existed here. But if you imagine it, Hamburg was once alive with people, commerce, and hope, a place where dreams were built on the banks of the Savannah River. Hamburg was established in the early 1800s as a river port. Farmers, merchants, and families came to trade goods and build a future. Life was simple but vibrant. Children ran along the docks, wagons carried produce to waiting ships, and the hum of community filled the streets. People celebrated together, supported each other, and took pride in their town, which was considered a hub of commerce along the river. But change came quickly. The town faced repeated floods that damaged homes and businesses. Economic shifts and competition from nearby cities slowly drained Hamburg of its lifeblood. Families moved away in search of stability and opportunity. Unlike towns destroyed by disasters alone, Hamburg's decline was gradual, a combination of nature and circumstance slowly erasing the life that had once flourished there. Imagining the last days of Hamburg is haunting. I picture the dock workers loading their last shipments, children playing near empty streets, and neighbors saying goodbye to each other, uncertain if they would ever see their town again. It wasn't dramatic, no fires or explosions, just the quiet disappearance of a place people loved. The river that once connected them to the world became both lifeline and threat. Today, little remains. Foundations, a few old structures, and the memories of those who lived there are all that testify to Hamburg's past. Walk near the old riverbanks, and it's easy to feel the presence of a town that refused to vanish completely. Nature has reclaimed most of the land, and the quiet reminds you of what once was. Leaving Hamburg, I felt a strange mix of sadness and respect. The town may have faded, but the lives of the people who built it remain etched in history. Hamburg teaches that even when towns vanish, the memories and echoes of human life can survive, waiting for those willing to imagine them again. As we leave these forgotten towns behind, it's hard not to feel the weight of history. Each place, Stumphouse Tunnel, Hawthorne, Lee, Ferguson, Granby, Ellington, Dunbarton, Meyers Mill, Colonial Dorchester, and Hamburg tell a story of people, dreams, and lives uprooted or erased. They may be silent now, but their memories linger in the land, whispers of a time that once was. If these stories made you curious or amazed, hit like, share with friends, and comment which town fascinated you the most. Remember, history is alive, even in places abandoned.